Hello again, everyone. "2010 turned out to be a very auspicious year for precision psychiatry and mental health with regard to the person I have the pleasure to introduce here today. In November 2010, at the annual Society for Neuroscience meeting, which is one of the largest gatherings of biomedical scientists, let alone neuroscientists in the world, typically over 30,000 people attend. Our next presenter spoke in an extremely personal and compelling way, arguably really the first public figure to be so vulnerable to talk about her own personal experiences and the experiences of her family members, in particular her sister Jessie and her nephew Kalen, about mental illness and familial mental illness. And that really inspired and opened the possibility to begin to address the chronic and unremitting stigma and discrimination that so severely burdens patients, their families, their friends, and all of society with regard to mental illness. In 2010 also, the first named female had her genome sequenced at full coverage. Both of those people are the most acclaimed actress of our time, Glenn Close, who I've had the privilege and the honor to call a deep friend, who has been a tireless mental health advocate for the past 15, 20 years, and co-founded together with her sister and her nephew this extraordinary organization that you're going to hear about today, headed by Pamela Harrington, the Bring Change to Mind Foundation. So it's my honor and pleasure now to introduce to you Glenn Close.
Thank you, Stephen. I am thrilled and honored to be here. Ine temimu, puvrishko me, kodasas simera. And I also want to thank Andreas Dracopoulos and the SNF Foundation for your incredibly generous hospitality and for focusing your brilliant light on mental health and the stigma that surrounds it. 20 years ago, I would never have predicted that I would be standing before you today as an advocate fighting to erase the stigma around mental illness. All those years ago, I was deep into my acting career, trying to maintain some kind of balance between work as a single mother and being there for my daughter. If anyone was missing from the occasional family gatherings, it was usually me. Then, one summer day in 2004, when I did happen to be at my parents' house, my sister Jessie came up to me and said, "I need help. I can't stop thinking about killing myself." What? What do you mean? She went on to tell me that a relentless voice in her head was not only telling her to kill herself, but was also giving her precise instructions in all the ways she could do it. Her eldest child, Kalen, had had his first psychotic break when he was 19, 4 years before Jessie's voices. He spent 2 years at McLean Hospital and was ultimately diagnosed with schizoaffective disorder. Of course, we all knew where he was, but didn't really understand what was going on. As a family, we had absolutely no vocabulary for mental illness. Going to a psychiatrist was unthinkable. We were from Greenwich, Connecticut, not New York City. And to my father, especially back in the early 50s when he became a surgeon at Columbia's Physicians and Surgeons on a GI Bill, psychiatry was a lesser science. So when a great uncle drank himself to death, we were told that it was because he was driven to it by Aunt Margaret. Another great uncle was tormented with violent schizophrenia and was periodically put in a straitjacket and hauled off to a psychiatric hospital. I was aware of his portrait, but not of his story. In the middle of lunch one day, my mother's half-brother excused himself, went out into the garden, and shot himself dead. We knew him as poor Uncle Harry. My maternal grandmother had the habit of sighing a lot, drawing the shades, and lying on her bed for hours on end. She would occasionally absent herself to a place called Silver Hill, a sanatorium. But we kids thought it was a spa because she once mentioned the excellent chef. Mental illness in our family was shrouded in silence. In my generation, Jessie was always the wild one who walked out of school in 10th grade and refused to go back. Her first attempt at suicide happened when she was 16, just before her 17th birthday and first of 5 marriages. When her unstable young husband turned out to be verbally and physically abusive, she tried to die by suicide a second time. When Kaylin and Jessie came home and struggled to understand and manage their chronic illnesses, I realized that we had to educate ourselves fast if they were to survive and if we were to survive as a family. Jessie and Kaylin told me that the stigma they were starting to experience was frequently worse than the illnesses themselves. Jessie was afraid to reveal her diagnosis to the parents of her daughter's friends for fear that they wouldn't allow their kids to come over to play. Kaylin was feeling excruciating shame and loneliness because his diagnosis, schizophrenia, was the scariest of all. When he returned from McLean Hospital, none of his friends were there for him, not one, and they never came back. Jessie and Kaylin asked me to help. I said I would, but only if they were willing to out themselves as living with mental illness on various national platforms. Without hesitation, they both said yes, and Bring Change to Mind was born. We had no idea of what we were getting into, but we did know what our core message would be. Start the conversation. Talk about it. My education began. To understand more about the people for whom I was intending to advocate, I went to Fountain House in New York City, a clubhouse type of organization run by people with lived experience. I cooked with them, gardened with them, and helped edit their club newspaper. And I came away with a greater empathy and understanding about what it means to live with a chronic mental illness. Since I was in the movie business, I thought the natural first step was to shoot a PSA. We shot it in New York's Grand Central Station, one of the most iconic public spaces in the United States. We arrived at 7 a.m., and there was Ron Howard, who I had called out of the blue and asked to direct. Ron is a really good guy. He and his crew were setting up in the great cavernous space that we had known since childhood. It's impossible to shut down Grand Central Station, so they were setting up with a constant flow of people arriving and departing, going about their day. It was crowded and very echoey, and there was no refuge from the noise and the hustle. Jessie blanched and clutched her little service dog, Snitz, closer to her. Kalen quickly put on his dark glasses and kept them on throughout the day. I honestly didn't know if they would make it, but they did. For 12 noisy, long, insufferably hot hours, Jessie wore a T-shirt that said bipolar disorder, and Kalen wore one emblazoned with schizophrenia. For 12 hours, they were there with about 75 other consumer volunteers, mostly from Fountain House, with everyone wearing their illnesses on their chests as hundreds of people walked by and stared. That's heroic in my eyes. And I have to add that my daughter Annie and Jessie's daughter Maddie were also there wearing T-shirts that said cousin and sister. Afterwards, when we told our then 85-year-old mother who lived in a remote corner of Wyoming about it, she said, "Oh, if only I could have been there. Then it would have been 3 generations." In early 2015, Bring Change to Mind officially adopted a struggling program called Let's Erase the Stigma and began working with that model in schools and with community members in the Bay Area to develop the idea of science-based, peer-to-peer high school clubs. Today, Bring Change to Mind clubs create safe, stigma-free spaces where kids talk to each other, learn about their illnesses or that of their friends or family, provide each other with comfort and support, and come up with school-wide initiatives. By the fall of 2015, we had 25 clubs. By the fall of this year, we will be approaching 550 clubs in 42 states. But goodwill for goodwill's sake is uninteresting. We have to know that we are moving the needle. So to that end, we have always had a world-class scientific advisory board which, inspired by our kids, assure that our clubs are not only engaging but effective while helping to develop and evaluate new initiatives. Today, 71% of our Bring Change to Mind high school students want to pursue a career in behavioral health. Bring Change to Mind clubs are the pipeline we are building with our next generation. The clubs are full of courageous kids who are transforming their schools and their communities. I have listened in on national Zoom conferences, and I attended a conference in person, and I am continually moved and completely blown away by our kids who are starting and maintaining vital conversations every day. As for Jessie and Kalen, they have up days and down days, but they have their lives. Jessie lives across the yard from me. I've learned how to help her get through the occasional difficult day, especially in April, which she calls her fetal position month. She has published 2 books, has finished the manuscript for a 3rd, and is always at the end of the line whenever people call her needing help with a mental health crisis. Kalen is an artist, a husband, and an exceptional human being. The fact that my family lives with mental illness puts us right at the heart of the human condition. I feel that today, the last word should go to my beloved Jessie. This is the sign-off to that first public speech 13 years ago in front of 5,000 people at the American Psychiatric Association's big conference. And you can see, if you look, her service dog Snitz's ears, because she always took her up with her to the podium.
I used to miss my booze and wild self, but not anymore. I used to miss Kaylin's younger, not sick self, but not anymore. It has become evident that for us, we are exactly who we're meant to be. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I am now thrilled and honored to introduce to you a Bring Change to Mind youth ambassador and leader, a former president of her Bring Change to Mind high school club in Virginia, and now a rising junior at UCLA majoring in physics. Ladies and gentlemen, April Smith.
Bring Change to Mind is absolutely necessary for high school students because it helps push the idea that mental health is just as important as physical health.
Good morning. It's an honor to be here with everyone today and to be a part of the conversation surrounding the future of mental health. It fills me with so much hope. In the fall of 2018, during my third year at Maggie L. Walker High School in Richmond, Virginia, I joined my school's newly established Bring Change to Mind club. And I joined because during the past 5 years, I had gone through some of the most difficult struggles with depression and anxiety. And for the first time, after years of therapy and countless trials with various medicines, I had felt happier, stronger, and I wanted to use my experiences to see if I can make my community a place with less mental health stigma. And it was such a new experience. In this club, students, teachers, we talked about mental health with openness. We learned more about what it meant to be mentally ill. And we met with school administrators to call for policy changes that could help decrease the stigma surrounding mental health in our community. For so long, I've been ashamed of myself for being depressed, for being anxious. I was so afraid to go to a psychiatrist for the first time because I thought that if I had to see a doctor about what's in here, it would mean that I was admitting that my soul, myself, was sick. But here I was in a Bring Change to Mind club, casually talking about mental health and how we could change our community's perspectives about what it meant to be mentally ill. In 2021, I traveled to Los Angeles to begin my studies at the University of California. I was so excited to begin my adult life, study what I love, to be independent. What I didn't expect was that just a few months later, I'd be flying back home because I was having panic attacks every day. I was devastated. After 3 years of relative calm, I had relapsed into severe depression and anxiety. And for the rest of that year, I sat at home, depressed, hopeless, stagnant. But this past fall, I got the chance to return to my university. I knew that this was my last chance. If I couldn't make it this time, I knew I couldn't afford to try again. And on my first day back at UCLA, I met a girl named Khadijah. She sat next to me in my math class, and I swallowed my shyness, and I introduced myself to her. Hey, I'm April. And a week later, we were doing math homework on the floor of her dorm. And a week after that, she was in my dorm studying. And sometime in early December, we had just finished our calculus homework. And it was just past midnight, and we were sitting on the edge of my bed. And we started talking. And by the end of that night, she had told me about her struggles with mental illness. And I had told her about my depression, my anxiety. For the rest of that year, she would come to my dorm, and we talked about things like mental health, personal struggles, our goals, our dreams. And I finished my first full year at UCLA last Friday. It was tough. There were times when I wasn't sure if I could make it, but I did. And before I left for the summer, I wrote Khadijah a letter to let her know how much she had helped me. I told her, as we wrap up a weird, tumultuous, but wonderful year, I have one thing I've been needing to say, and that's thank you. Thank you for spending nights with me, talking about the most random things, about the most meaningful things. Thank you for making me feel less alone. Thank you for making me feel loved. Thank you for helping me conquer a whole year at UCLA, something I was ready to give up on just a year ago. I've realized that this is the effect that Bring Change to Mind has on the students in these clubs. I mean, here I was, someone who had hidden my mental health for so long, opening up so easily. This is how hundreds of small clubs across the country create thousands of young mental health ambassadors that go out and make giant changes in the global dialogue, the global attitude and global approach to how we talk about and think about mental health. And this change, it comes with being student-run. It comes with allowing the loudest voices in the room to be that of our most important stakeholders, the students themselves. It's true that one room of high school advocates might only create modest changes in the neighborhood. But when you have 500 rooms across 40 US states, combating mental health stigma in each of their community, you have yourselves a movement. Khadijah later responded to my letter, and I want to end by reading to you what she said. She wrote, "Thank you for an amazing year too, April. I survived it, and partially because of you. You are one of the best friends I have ever had, and I can't thank you enough for always checking on me. It means a lot more than you know. I hope this summer you can be genuinely relaxed and happy with the people you love. I hope you find something to make you smile when you're on your own, because it's tough, I would know. Let's not let life get us down, my friend. We'll come back stronger next year." Thank you.